Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A good morning and salam sejahtera everyone. A very warm welcome and thank you for being with us on this lovely Saturday morning for this Sembang Ilmu Series SIS lecture. My name is Aqilah Dahlan and I represent the Malay Heritage Foundation, MHF. Today marks the third SIS session this year and session number 8 for the series. We would like to thank all of our returning participants for their continued support, be it on-site or virtually. And for those who had just joined us, a huge welcome to you as well. Let me share with you briefly what SIS is all about. SIS is a discursive platform for our youths and young professionals to deliberate and discuss issues relating to the socio-cultural development of the Malays in Singapore from a contemporary perspective. The forum-style sessions invites a panel of speakers from undergraduates to lecturers to present their views on a wide range of topics related to Malay culture and community. Today marks the first time MHF is partnering with the Singapore Book Council, SBC, in organising this forum entitled Cradle to Grave, From Tradition to Preservation. Thank you, SBC, and we hope to collaborate soon. We would also like to extend our sincere appreciation to Ungu Pen and the Ethos books for making today's session possible despite the short notice. We would also like to thank our guest moderator, Ustaz Alfian Yasrif Kuchit, who has kindly agreed to be with us today, even before knowing what the discussion will be. Ustaz Alfian is a PhD candidate in the Faculty of Law at the National University of Singapore, NUS, and has had experience working in public service. His research focuses on the history and philosophy of Muslim law in Singapore, and World Scientific and Berita Harian have published his articles. He obtained a bachelor's degree in Law and Sharia from the International Islamic University of Malaysia, IIUM. Ustaz Alfian was a Fulbright scholar and received a master's degree in law from Columbia University, New York. Without further ado, let me now invite Ustaz Alfian, who will moderate the Q&A segment later, to start the SIS session and introduce our first guest speaker. With all respect, over to you, Ustaz Alfian.
Terima kasih, Saudari Aqilah. So I'm always happy to be here with MHF. I think the events that you've organised, apart from Sembang Ilmu Series, you also have the Wacana Warisan webinar series, as well as the Cendekiawan Lestari series. And I think these are important platforms for community voices to come together and allows us to expand our vista and hear the competing visions and versions in terms of how the community is to move forward. I think it's important that we have gatherings like this also simply because it allows us to tell our own stories, our own voices to be heard. And very often these voices are imaginatively said, creatively, sensitively, and with much empathy. And I think that's important. When I heard that this is the first time MHF is collaborating with the Singapore Book Council, I think it's even better. Because I think it's important for us to cultivate this reading culture, this writing culture, this research culture, as has been shown by today's panelists. So, you know, when I became a dad decades ago, it was actually very difficult for me to find a children's storybook that was in Malay, that was aesthetically pleasing, that was locally produced, that spoke to the experiences that we as Malays in Singapore would have. And I'm very pleased today that we have Puan Maria Mahat with us. As you notice, you know, the book introduces us to a world where there's batik, there's atuk, there's nenek. And it gives me great pleasure for me to introduce her. Puan Maria Mahat is the co-founder of Ungu Pen, which is an independent publisher and distributor of quality books and educational content. She has written extensively in various genres, and her works has been published in both English and Malay. So please welcome Puan Maria Mahat. Thank you.
Should I just sit there and wait for the next panelist to be introduced? Oh, do my first presentation. Okay. I'm still a tech noob, so I have paper here. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum semua. Okay, peace be upon you and good morning to everyone and who's here today. So good morning to my esteemed panelists and also to Ustaz Alfian for that very warm welcome. And also to the Malay Heritage Foundation and Singapore Book Council for having me here today to speak on this topic, Cradle to Grave, from tradition to preservation. So since I'm the first speaker, I will speak on Cradle, okay? So I'm a bit nervous, but I hope that I'm able to sustain your interest. I hope the topic sounds big, but you know, it will be interesting for you. Okay, where's the clicker? Okay. So this is me, Maria Mahat, and as you can see, I wear multiple hats. So yeah, just a little introduction, if you don't mind, about myself. I'm also a storyteller, a book publisher with Ungu Pen, and also an adult a storyteller first, a storyteller. As you can see, I've done storytelling at the Malay Heritage Centre, and also adult trainer. I have a background in early childhood education, and also I do workshop with young children, and also sometimes at the museum. So these are some of the hats that I wear. I will not bore you further. Okay, so here are some of the stories that I have written. I started with The Truth Seekers at Haji Lane. I don't know whether, you know, it's a novel. And then I thought, okay, that will be the first and the last book I would do, because I decided to leave full-time employment in 2015. And I did that book, and I thought, okay, that's it. But suddenly, every year I give birth to more books. So it went to There Are Saga Seeds in Our Pockets. And I've also translated some books here. And I would say the rest is history lah. So it looks like I'll be here for a little while to produce more books, inshallah. Okay, so as hang on. So in 2015, like I said, when I left full-time employment, I was also a freelance teacher, trainer, museum educator, and I had the privilege to work with the National Heritage Board. So one of the programs that I did was called Singapore Little Treasures, which was not only conducted at the Malay Heritage Centre, but also at Indian Heritage Centre and the Sun Yat-sen Nanyang Memorial Hall. So, and one of the feedback that I got from teachers at that time is that we do not have books related to our Malay culture. We do not have books in Malay also. So that prompted the publication of this bilingual book. It's called There Are Saga Seeds in Our Pockets, Ada Biji Saga di Dalam Saku Kami. So this book, you can see that Mahir, the boy in red wearing baju kurung cekak musang, is the central character. And he also wears something on his head, which is called the tanja. And his friend is Mahir, which is a boy who's wearing the blue baju Melayu Teluk Belanga with songkok. And this character is a group of preschoolers who actually went on a learning journey to the Malay Heritage Centre. So because of the feedback from preschool educators, I did this book. And okay, the book actually follows Mahir and his classmate to see a snapshot of Singapore history and also the vicinity of Kampung Glam and the Malay culture. And so far so good. The book was translated to Mandarin, and also we did a digital program with the Esplanade in 2021 during the height of COVID. Okay, so I'll move on. So after publishing There Are Saga Seeds in Our Pockets, I still hear educators say we do not have Malay books. We do not have Malay books. We do not have Malay books in our culture. So most of the books, like you said, is imported from Malaysia. It does not depict our lived experiences. And also that our children are not familiar to things like kampung life and paddy fields and even chickens. So if you ask them, where can I find chickens? They will say it's from the supermarket, the frozen one. So they don't know how chickens actually look like. So that prompted another publication, which is the Ada Khazanah di Perpustakaan Kami, which is there are treasures in our library. So I wanted to tell teachers and parents, go to the library, please. We have a lot of treasures there, even though it's not written in Malay, but if the illustration is good, you can always use it with your children, okay? So if you can see that in this book, I include things like the earth, the rocket. I mean, as Malay, we should learn about all these things, but I also include batik and songket and a bit of legend. So do you know what this is? What local legend is this? Todak melanggar Singapura. Betul. Singapore attacked by the garfish. How about this one? Yes, Kusu Island. The rest smiling, wondering what it is. So it's about Kusu Island. So since you know it's Kusu Island, you better Google to find out what's the story about. Okay, I won't tell you here. Okay, so along the way between 2019 and 2020, I realized that that's when there's more books being published going into the market, and that's a good sign. So as you can see, this is one publication by Ungu Pen called Kuih Yang Mana Satu. Again, because we see that there's nothing much on our culture, so we keep seeing that children's writers start coming in to write about kuih. That is a very favorite topic, so you will see a lot of books on kuih, even air tangan nenek, pedas dan sebagainya. Okay, and of course our local games. We also have reference book Permainan Anak Kampung by Kak Izia, who's here today. Okay, and also Silat by Kak Izia. But we still need more books on our culture because no one has written about sepak takraw. I don't know what else Malay sports are there. Okay, so let me show you some more books on our culture, which is locally produced as well as from Malaysia. So we have on fabric, we have on musical instruments. Again, a bit on our festival. And recently, this is published by Ungu Pen, Pokok Pisang, Kisah Todak, Menyerang Singapura. It's about banana tree when the garfish attacked Singapore, and Perigi, the well, the tale of Radin Mas Ayu, which is a local legend. Okay, so back to 2020, I asked myself, what else can I do? Okay, what else is there that I want our young children to know that hasn't been written before? And for me, as someone who writes children's book, I find that children's book is a very safe space to write culture that is not so imposing, especially if you are afraid of, oh, what is this, cradle to grave, apa tu kan? So I think that children's book is very safe in that idea. And also, it can come with very rich in ideas and thoughts, and a safe space for us to introduce culture, traditions, and heritage. I was at the library one day reading children's books, and I stumbled upon a book on practices of an indigenous community about childbirth. So that prompted this idea of writing a prequel to Mahir Mirza. So Mahir started at 6 years old, going to Malay Heritage Centre. Now he's just born. So I decided to start, okay, let's start from birth, okay? Before he enters school, so I wrote Selamat Datang ke Dunia Mahir Mirza, Welcome to this World Mahir Mirza, which captures him from birth till 1 year old. And then Mahir Mirza Boleh, because I had some feedback from Mendaki. We need to inspire our kids to boleh. So that's why I wrote Mahir Mirza Boleh from age 2 to 4 years old. So today's topic, from cradle to grave, from tradition to preservation. As I'm doing this slide, I realized that this journey of Mahir from birth to where he is now is actually unplanned. I did not plan it this way. I started with him being 6 years old, and then I go back to 0, his birth, because unsuspectingly, we have a lot of practices and tradition that is probably documented or not, okay? More so in a children's book, where I think is, again, approachable and safe for children and parents to talk to their kids. So in Welcome to This World Mahir Mirza, okay, I use, hang on, okay, I use many objects that is from the book as well, which I can show you later. So the idea behind writing this book, because I was asked, how do I pick children's interests to not only read the book, but also for parents to use. So one of the idea, because I was trained in the museum, is to use object-based learning. So this is a bit of theory. So object-based learning is to use, is an active learning to use some artworks, artifacts, the props, the object itself, to develop closer observation and critical thinking. And it provides a direct link to the past, it engages the senses, so it's multisensorial, and it develops certain skills, okay, inquiry, speaking, listening, and deduction, and so on. So central to this pedagogy also, we use See, Think, Wonder. It is a thinking routine strategy developed by Project Zero, aimed at extending and deepening thinking. So these are some of the strategies we use, or when I write a book, these are some of the things at the back of my mind, how I can use this book later on. So for Mahir Mirza, the object that we use is, I think you can guess, the book. Look at the book. What do you see? I can't use a baby, right? A baby is not an object in that sense. So I use the batik cloth. On the front page, you can see the batik cloth. And if you take a closer look at the book, every page has a batik cloth. So when you go home with your child, you can tell her to focus on something in these pages that keep recurring again and again. What is it? Where is it? What it is used for? And the second book, Mahir Mirza boleh. What did I use? Wow. Okay, so yes, the kite, which is an object that for a young child, they can see, they can touch. Okay, so we use kites. So for a young children, unlike say a non-fiction book for children, for picture books, we try to make something that is more concrete for the child. So we use some objects. So again, back to there are saga seeds in our pockets. We use object-based learning because the aim of this book is actually to introduce congkak and saga seed. And whenever I talk about saga seeds, people get very nostalgic for some reason. Because like saga seed, oh yeah, I used to play this and this and this. So I don't know why, only when it comes to saga seed. So we'll talk about the congkak for this. But also, it's not just about the object that I wanted to showcase, but the knowledge and skills. So what are the knowledge and skills is that? It's about playing the congkak, okay? It's about playing the congkak and also adab or manners. Sometimes in Malay, it's called kesantunan Melayu. Like when we visit a Malay home, what do? These days, children need to be taught. Like, we have to take off our shoes in an Asian culture, and we have to salam, right? How do children salam these days? I hear laughter. Is it put the hands at the ear? Or the forehead? So these are very subtle skills or knowledge that I want to pass, which is not necessarily need to be captured in the text, but it could be illustrated. And also the etiquette of eating. Why do we wash our hands? How do we eat? And especially when we show dulang, adab makan. Bila makan berdamai itu macam mana? When you eat in a dulang, do you eat the one nearest to you, or you just take the food at the end of it? So these are basic things, but I want to inculcate that in our young children. Okay, so this is one of the things that I was informed about the intangible and tangible cultural heritage that I can put in my books. Okay, just some, theory about tangible is physical artifacts that is produced, maintained, and transmitted intergenerationally in a society. So it could be even buildings, okay, or any products in that sense. So intangible is something that is the practices, the representations, the expressions, the knowledge, the skills that is related to the object or instruments. Like I said, how do you play congkak? How do you even do batik cloth? How do you make this wow? How does it fly? Okay, so these are the questions that I can ask in my book. So as you can see, Selamat Datang ke Dunia or Welcome to This World, Mahir Mirza is a picture book that features a snippet of the life of a newborn until his first birthday. Central to the story is the cultural practices of welcoming a baby into a Malay Muslim family. And of course, being early childhood trained, I have to add developmental milestones. Okay, so what are some of these tangible and intangible cultural heritage in the book? Batik, of course, choosing a good name for a baby, azan and ikamat, which is the recitation of the Muslim prayer when a baby is born on both the right and left ears. Tahnik, in Malay it's called belah mulut. It's the use of honey and pressed dates on the baby's lips or palate. Akikah, which is like the korban but not during the Hajj. This is when you have a baby, you do sacrifice of goats or sheep for charity. We have the tahlik, the cukur rambut, shaving of the baby's hair, also for charity. And singing Malay lullaby, I think that this is a cultural heritage too, because we can move away, Twinkle Twinkle Little Stars. We can have our own Malay songs, right? And also silaturahim, bonding, okay, or maintaining relationships. For these practices, I actually consulted an Ustaz at that time, Ustaz Muhammad Khalid Rafi, who helped to respond to all my questions via Zoom because it was at the height of COVID in 2020. So some of the things in the book, choosing a good name. So the name of the child is Mahir Mirza. Do you know what the meaning? Like your name, sir, is Zakaria Zainal. What does Zakaria mean? Yes, so like Zakaria is named after one of the prophets, and I'm sure, do you know why? Like your dad put or your parents give you that name? Okay, that's nice. So there could be reasons why parents give us certain names, and this could be the conversation starters between parent and child. Okay, we can ask the child to think about where do you think your parent, why do you think your parent give you the name? So Mahir Mirza means the skillful one and also the intelligent one. Betul, Ustaz? Betul, eh? Okay, and azan and ikamat is the prayer. The father will usually say these prayers in the right and left ears. I won't go into detail. Tahnik, it can be done by the father or the grandparent to put pressed dates, soften it, a bit of honey or even juice, and just to dab it on the child's lip or palate. The idea is that the child will be able to suckle well, actually. And also, I think, and this is to be done on the 7th, 14th, or 21st day after the birth. The aim is that the baby is able to suckle well, and hopefully he will grow to be courteous and speak kind words. Betul, Ustaz? Okay, I just hope that I'm correct. Okay, Akikah. Okay. So for a boy that is born, usually will sacrifice 2 goats. For a baby girl, it's usually 1 goat. And the reason is to give this to charity as well. Tahlik, the cukur rambut or shaving the baby's hair for charity. It can be done by the grandfather, but these days, I think we can purchase this service, right? And then Ustaz can come to our house to do this. And the value of the child's hair is converted to the value of gold or silver, depending on the financial ability of the father. And this cash is then donated again to charity. So again, there's a lot of charity here when a child is born. And how do I pick the child's interest? Because I have to believe that children are curious, they want to know more, they are also competent. You can entrust them with a real baby, but of course we use, a doll, and they are active learners. So part of the developmental milestones, we ask them to try and crawl, to even toddle, so they actually participate in our activities. This is done at the Malay Heritage Centre. So again, how do I pick children's interest? For a children's book, learning should be hands-on, using authentic materials, and it should be multisensorial. What can I see? These are also conversation starters that parents or even educators can use with their kids. What can you see in this book? What does it feel like to touch the batik? Okay, what can you hear? Can you hear the baby crying? Or can you hear the goat bray? The goat, what does the goat sound make? Okay. What can you smell? Can you smell the mutton rendang? Okay. Or even the burning of the wax when we want to do the batik craft. And how does it taste like? Okay. So these are some of the objects that I bring during my storytelling session. So what can you see besides the batik cloth? On top near the book there. So I actually brought some dates and honey to show. And I even asked if they would like to try the dates. And the top there, I also brought, that's the wax for the burning of the wax to make into the batik craft. And also the batik chap, because batik is made in different ways. So these are the intangible cultural heritage related to batik. I even have angklung there because I want to make the story interesting. So we sing songs. Like I said, forget Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. What are some Malay lullabies do you know of? Puan? Huh? Boy laju-laju? Okay, tak ingat, tak apa. Okay. Again, I use many objects and props. Activities has to be hands-on. Sometimes I use this magic box or feely bag, treasure hunt, and games, role plays, music and movement, dialogic reading, seating wonder. So there's many things that I can do from just one book. Even though the book may look simple, but we can be innovative and creative about it. So for example, the batik cloth, like I said, I showcase it throughout the pages of the book and I ask the child to look closely, observe, okay? I also use the batik cloth as a prop and I ask him to observe what are the colors, the patterns, the shapes, the design that you can see. So you play the I Spy game and close looking. And also, if I have the batik cloth, I can ask them to, what else can we do with this batik cloth? So it enriches their imagination. Okay. Singing Malay lullabies. So ada lagu, 4 songs here. Even though in my book I only put the title of one song, Suriram, but in our storytelling we managed to do 4 songs. Dodoi si dodoi, Suriram, Buih Sabung, and Selamat Hari Raya. Hari Raya. Selamat Hari Lahir because it's the child's first birthday. So let me see. And I expose the angklung. Oh, tak ada sound lah. Tu saya tengah menyanyi. Okay. So you can see that the child get exposed to a musical instrument and we get to sing a song as well and we also do it together with them. Okay. So if we don't do that, at home you can also engage in dialogic reading. Use the term seating wonder and peer and crowd, which is an acronym which teachers should know, but I think we do not need to talk about it here. So again, what can you see? Close looking. Is look at the book, looks closely at the object. Okay, what do you think this can be used for? We have a nenek who's at a grandmother who is at our storytelling session, and she actually showed us how to swaddle. And the child here is actually just another person's child, and he's helping.
Is that why do you put the hands up?
See, he's very curious, so he's also helping the grandmother to swaddle the baby using the batik cloth.
Nicely folds it into. Oh wow!
Okay. So what else do you wonder about? Like we say, we want to showcase some intangible cultural heritage. So we talk about how the batik is made using two different types of method. One is using the chanting, one is using the chap, and then burning of the wax and so on and so forth. So yeah, this is some visuals that we took at our storytelling session. Again, these strategies will help us to appreciate our culture and also our cultural differences, because you know that if I say batik only belongs to the Malay, later other people say cannot. It also belongs to Indonesian, it belongs to Malaysian, it belongs to whoever. So I think we don't go there for this. We try to appreciate different points of view. Okay, so these are just some of the skills that we encourage when we do all this object-based learning and so on and so forth. So silaturahim is the maintaining of relationship, because the book when I did this was also at the height of COVID. So I decided to use Zoom meeting with another pair of grandparents who live overseas. Okay, and also when we had our session, we had a child, the mother, and two grandmothers who came from both sides of the family. So I think it helps in the bonding as well. Because when I talk about culture, usually, you know, people get very nostalgic and they want a conversation with the grandparents. So, okay, I actually didn't look at my script. Okay. So my hope is that stories also is a form of intangible cultural heritage, and I hope that through Mahir Mirza series, the younger generation get to know about our traditions, a snapshot of Singapore's history, and how our Malay practices or Muslim practices in welcoming a child into the family, documenting this into storybooks. This is my way to ensure that these ideas, custom, practices, traditions, and heritage are preserved. So my hope is that through these stories, I am able to cultivate an appreciation for the book, as well as exposure and awareness of our rich culture and traditions from the cradle, so that the children may grow up to become lifelong knowledge seekers, readers, and advocates of heritage. And one last thing, there is this book called Malong, written by a Filipino author who's also a friend. And Mary Ann is actually, she's Catholic, but she lives in Mindanao, a predominantly Muslim state. And Malong is like their Malong is like our batik. So it's a traditional cloth. And this cloth is also used in many ways, like for a baby sleeper, you know, the buai and so on, like the bag, even a swaddle, and even a Muslim prayer mat. She used it in the book. And also this. In a children's book. So in a way, I feel that we have a lot of similarities, that our batik is also used in a funeral, especially the earth tones. Okay? And this artifact is, like I said, it's used from cradle to the grave. So with that, I end my presentation and I hand over to my co-panelists. Thank you.
Right, so terima kasih Puan Maria. I think we did not just get an introduction to the social, cultural practices of the Malays when it comes to welcoming a newborn baby, but also what goes into the production of a book. And thank you for sharing your life journey in terms of, publishing, writing. You showed a lot of passion and interest there. I sometimes conduct tutorials for graduates of Islamic universities from overseas, and I think I can use some of your techniques in terms of piquing their interest and making sure that they listen to me sometimes. So our next speakers will be discussing another live event. We have three authors, Tuan Zaki Jumari, Tuan Fauzy Ismail, and Tuan Zakaria Zainal, but apparently there's division of labor. So Tuan Zakaria will be presenting, and then the question and answer session, you will be joined by Tuan Fauzy. Okay, great. So let me just introduce the two authors. Tuan Fauzy Ismail graduated with a master's degree in architecture from the National University of Singapore. And his research interest focuses on Singapore's architecture and urban heritage. He was also an artist in residence at the substation from 2018 to 2019 and was a fashion designer in Paris. And for our next presenter, Tuan Zakaria, he, apart from publishing Khairat Kita, he also published 2 other books, Riot Recollections and The Invisible Force Singapore Gurkhas. And as a photographer, he has put his talents and skills to very good use, especially in covering the recent Malaysian elections. You were there in Pahang, in the urban centres, and then you focus on the 4 leaders, right? Ismail Sabri, Anwar Ibrahim, Muhyiddin Yassin, and Mahathir Mohamad. So without further ado, please welcome our next speaker.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, Assalamualaikum semua. Okay, just put the timer here. Let's see whether the slides are above. All right, very good morning to everyone. So when we Cradle to Grave from tradition to preservation, yeah, so Badan Khairat was a project that me and Fauzy and Zaki did together. So the question perennial to everyone's mind will be, what happens when we die? What are the rights that follow after? Who are the people that will help us transition from life to death? And what happens and who are the people that are behind this? So we just turn to the next slide. So I think I can use the clicker, right? Okay, so when the topic first came, Fauzy approached me to say that, hey, there's this topic that we would like to do together. And me and Fauzy worked on a few projects before. So one of the things that I'm very interested in is understanding the context of being Muslim and being Malay within the Singaporean context. Of course, we look at our neighbors and, you know, they also have their unique approach to things. So for me, I was very interested in how Islam and being Malay is represented here. So one of the things that I worked with him before was working on musollas during Ramadan, usually how secular spaces within public housing turn into religious spaces within that period, yeah, and the people behind it. And actually the people behind running these spaces are actually people very closely involved in Badan Khairat also. So Badan Khairat, the concept is basically volunteer, community-led initiatives based on a centuries-old tradition of mutual aid. Everyone pitches in a small amount, then there's a pooled capital for anyone who needs it during an emergency, mainly death, because that's the raison d'etre of their organization, but they have extended it to emergencies, education, and a few others. Yeah. So this idea and this concept actually gained resonance in the last few years because of the pandemic, where people really hit rock bottom and they wanted to be able to get access to funds, to be able to help their families. And yeah, so it was quite interesting how something as old came back to the forefront again. When we discovered and did our research, we understood that about 20 organizations were left. And then that also brought in a lot of questions in terms of sustainability, in terms of what's the relevance of their role. Since Ustaz introduced me just now, when I was doing my travels to Malaysia, I was actually in Pahang, one of the Felda estates in Bera actually, which is the seat where Ismail Sabri was, and there was, and one of the locations that we were supposed to go to was a mosque at the top of the hill. And it's quite funny, the project wasn't in my mind, but the first thing when I arrived there was this truck, Badan Khairat Kematian, van jenazah. I was like, okay, seems like I'm doing this all over again. So, and it's funny how I think for them it's a way of life. The Malaysian Malays, they see it as, you know, I think if they were to hear this, they'll be like, huh, what's going on? Like, shouldn't this be a way of life for you in terms of having such communities present front and center? So then other questions would sprung up in terms of, I think, when Puan Maria was saying about the commercialization of certain services, you know. That's also another thing that we wanted to look into in terms of the exploration, in terms of stories. But what we tried to do with the project was we let it be narrative driven. We wanted to tell stories to other people. Sorry, it's not related to what I'm thinking. I'm just showing that MCCY and where can you find the other mutual benefit societies. I think one of the gripe that Fauzy had was that there was a lot of talk on, organizations like Singapore Clans, and so he said, I think we have something similar. We have Badan Hairat that is either within proximity, ethnic base, like the Jawalo Masikin, or also like from, say, people who were from a different part, from Batu Pahat. I was in Batu Pahat recently when I covered. Then I realized that my parents were texting me, oh, your dad's side of the family is actually from Batu Pahat, they travel. So that made me realize that, because Batu Pahat is great asam pedas, that's why my late grandmother was able to cook very good nasi, asam pedas, yeah. Okay, so how does it work, this system? So I think some of you might be familiar with it. You have heard your parents talk about it. They set aside money. For some, it's when they pass, then they collect. But what they do is they become a bit more organized. Say they do it like retroactively. They do it, collect first, die later. So the funeral arrangements are carried out, so on and so forth. So a few things here to take note of. I think one is how death is very central to Muslims. A good friend of mine that we interviewed said that it is even better than a SAF call-up, Like, if someone passes, you can be sure that they're already there before you know it. Yeah. I think the other concept is the idea of paying it forward. That no matter how small the amount that you pay, you are your brother's keeper, you are your sister's keeper. I think that is a concept that is lost prior. I thought it was just basically a very transactionary thing. But then I realized that after a while that even the poorest can help their people around them. And that was a beautiful concept that I've learned. And the leaders that we spoke to didn't explicitly say that, but you can hear that that was the idea that they wanted to share when they did this, when they are doing it. So all of them, when we interviewed, are all volunteers. They don't take any money, and then and it's really quite almost like a thankless job doing it. But of course, when someone passes, the community comes. It becomes a way to gather strength around. Yeah. So I'm just showing the brief history of the Badan Hairat, which our intellectual debt goes to Zaki Jumari, who really went through the archives and found all this, because we didn't have any authoritative document that helped with everything. Yeah. So in 1960s, the MBO bill was passed. 71 and 78 was important in terms of the merger, because we felt that it was important to have a central body, but of course there were competing thinking and differences. Then at the height, I think it was at 75, we had a total of almost 96 MMBOs. Can you imagine? If probably we map them out, you can see that they're all located everywhere, serving communities all over, not just relating to death, but relating to things around the community. Yeah? So I think I want to say that Maria shared a brilliant presentation in terms of the community, but then when you look at it, all these things that are being executed, from all the things that she said, like Chukurambo and everything, there was always a community behind it. And we also think about, say, displacement. I think we should know when the transition from post-Merdeka onwards, and the Land Acquisition Act, and many other things that happen. So some of these communities are displaced not just once but twice, and for them to be able to gather strength around was very difficult. You could see that they almost gave up. Like, okay, yeah. So there's the urging of the MBO registrar. 97 was the third convention. Then 2001, 53. Now 2022, about 22 MMBOs remain. So we realized that these organizations are actually social anchors in the community and custodians of intangible cultural heritage of the Malay Muslim community in Singapore. They are keepers of important traditions. Even though they don't claim to be, they would say that, we just focus, kita just like some of them would crudely say kita tunggu orang mati je, you know. When actually they don't. I'm sure they do more than that, but sometimes they feel that way. Yeah. So just sharing two stories. One is from West Coast Badan Khairat, founder and president Haji Muhammad Ali bin Haji Ismail. So he was a key driver of the Badan Khairat in West Coast. What was very interesting was that that West Coast area was just starting out in terms of a neighborhood for HDB, and he decided that since there was no like from the kampung, there was no place for them to gather, to do things that are associated with Malay Muslim life. He decided that we should lead the way. We should look out for the people within the community in terms of all aspects of life that is needed. Yeah. This is him with his team at his home right now. So I want to switch to the Instagram video. Can someone help me out with that? Yes, okay.
Terawih ni, kalau nak dikatakan senang, dia susah. Kalau nak dikatakan susah, dia payah. Jadi dalam soal ni, mesti nak ada semangat kepada datang kuasa yang 5 orang itu. Kita semua umur semua, dah 70 ke atas semua. Memang kita besar hatilah. Kita syukur Alhamdulillah apa yang kita usahakan. Jadi mungkin dengan izin Allah tadi, maka hati mereka-mereka itu terpaut untuk hadir walaupun di bawah kolom yang tidak begitu sempurna. Tahun 2019 kita dah tak ada tarawih lagi. As you say, this year pun tak ada tarawih lagi dalam kawasan itu Void Deck. Jadi itulah kedudukannya.
I think the reason I decided to show this video was to have you hear the leader of Barkis and his sharing. 1, 2, that we started doing the project at the height of COVID. Yeah. So from a documentarian point of view, because I was in a way in charge of translating how this entire project would be documented in a way, was that a lot of contemporary collection of, say for example, activity and stuff, it was going to be very difficult. We had to rely a lot on people's conversations, archives, old stories. So it can be a bit seemingly dry, but you have to push through the ideas that they are talking about, translating it from idea to print. I think that was something we tried our best to do it lah. Yeah, so during so those are some of the challenges that happened during the peak of COVID. And at the same time, I felt, if only we could time travel back at least about 2 decades or 3 decades, where I think there might be still a hive of activity when we do a project like this. So this is an example of a newly formed West Coast estate and doing a hadra. So front and center, you see. Of course, even if they call themselves Badan Khairat or Perikatan or Pentadbiran, they try to look at other aspects of life instead of just Khairat Kematian. Yeah. So another individual that I met was Encik Yahya bin Qadri. So he was working in customs, and he's a member of the organization for almost half a decade. That's very long. And we find it very interesting that besides proximity, ethnicity, they will also gather around workplaces. So some of the oldest Badan Khairat were actually from customs. Another one is actually from police. And if my memory serves correct in the research for the book, there is actually a religious building inside old police academy where they catered to the Muslim folks who were living inside there. So you can imagine how center life was religion and catering to the people that work there. So for him, the organization provided support to the Muslim staff. Now it has been renamed to cater to all Muslims. This is his team. And out of most of the Badan Khairat, they seem a bit more equipped to the next frontier, partly because they have a bit more financial resources. They have they all come from fairly slightly corporate governmental background, so they can organize a bit better in that way. Yeah. So I just want to play the video, and so you get to hear Encik Yahya bin Kadri a bit better. Thank you.
Nama saya Muhammad Yahya bin Kadri. Saya bersama dahulunya Lembaga Kebajikan Pekerja-Pekerja Islam Custom Singapura yang kini bernama Singapore Customs and Immigrations Muslim Staff Benevolent Association. Saya bersama persatuan ini sekitar 50 tahun, iaitu sejak tahun 1971 hingga kini. Pada asasnya, kebajikan yang persatuan adakan bermula dengan persoalan kematian, tetapi dia berubah. Mula-mulanya ahli, tetapi kemudiannya diperkembangkan untuk juga isteri, iaitu tanggungjawab. Tetapi hingga ke hari ini kita dapati meliputi tanggungan yang lain seperti anak-anak ahli. Dan untuk faedah yang kedua, ward hospital dan untuk study award 2000 kita terdengar bahawa persatuan hampir-hampir nak dimansuhkan, nak dibubarkan oleh RMBO. Ini disebabkan oleh mereka tidak dapat memenuhi permintaan atau kehendak RMBO untuk mengadakan penyata kira-kira persatuan. Pasal tiap-tiap tahun kita akan memberi penyata kira-kira kita kepada RMBO, tapi sedihnya tidak berlaku pada tahun 2000 tu selama lebih kurang 3 tahun. Jadi alhamdulillah saya menyahut, saya masuk secara aktif dalam persatuan pada tahun 2004. Alhamdulillah, tim yang kami ada, kami berikrar akan teruskan perjalanan ini. Dan alhamdulillah, sehingga ke hari ini saya rasa persatuan berkembang dengan baiknya. Ini disebabkan oleh teamwork, tim ahli jawatankuasa yang kita miliki hari ini, tim yang baik. Dengan digitalization, kami bergerak selari. Kami ada ahli jawatankuasa yang baik dalam persoalan ini. Jadi contohnya pada tahun 2015 kami mula dengan adanya website kami. Contohnya kami ada email sekarang, email resmi. Kami juga tubuhkan bentuk ni WhatsApp group juga untuk kedua-dua bahagian associate member dan juga ordinary member. Sejak tahun ini kami melakukan sesuatu, iaitu kita keluarkan electronic receipt untuk pembayaran yuran. Kalau kita rasa kita buat sesuatu untuk amalan kita, kita akan lebih sadar, kita akan lebih ikhlas melakukannya. Jadi ini antara harapan saya lah. Bila kita ingin beramal, kita akan lakukan terbaik dengan penuh keikhlasan, insya-Allah.
Concept which I thought it was perfect. So a few things from that video was going through an existential crisis, his sadness that he might have been close, the concept of doing charity with Sada and Ikhlas, which is I think a state of awareness and also sincerity. So all this pieced together by this group. And challenges, I think we've mentioned that it was about COVID and meeting and interviewing elderly leaders because they are vulnerable. For me, it was it's always about operationalizing abstract concepts into something very tangible for people to grasp. Also understanding who our target readers could be, putting it in proper chapters. But we were fortunate to have the help of Ethos books with the editors and coming through to that. And also just the translating in itself, which I think a lot of work that comes with the terrain of working in Singapore is that going back and forth between what he meant or she meant when they said something. Yeah. So just to cap it off, I think we want to let the conversation be vibrant so that Fauzy and me can come in a bit better. What does the future mean for this group of people? What is the state of play? What happens next? Who will take over? You can see all of them all pretty old. Yeah, so thank you very much.
So thank you, panel, for the illuminating presentation and insightful sharing. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to the question and answer segment. I would like to invite the panel to take your respective seats at the front. And I would also like to invite everyone in attendance and those tuning into this session virtually to post your questions. You may use the platform Slido either by scanning the QR code shown on the screen or entering the code 409652. I repeat, 409652. And for those watching this SIS forum via Facebook Live, you may use the comment section below to direct your questions. We have also prepared a roving microphone for those who wish to ask the panel questions directly. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much for the amazing and very insightful presentations. I think one thing that when we come to this sort of sessions is the kind of effort that you took in order to produce a book. So it's not just something that we can get from reading the text itself, but also the pretext in terms of what are the things that motivated you and what are the things that came into your mind in terms of producing such a text, and then the context itself. And I think that's very enriching and very enlightening. But because this is a book session, I was thinking that maybe if, Puan, would you like to read something from your book? Maybe just for four pages and get a sense as to how you would actually portray, the voice and all that. Is that something that you're okay?
I can try. Storytelling session, short and sweet. Okay, English or Malay? English, huh?
Malay, I want to hear the words in Malay.
Okay, because we have our friends here. First and foremost, hello, good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? Huh? Are you sleeping? Just like this baby? Now, what can you see from the book cover here? Should I go in front and ask? Okay. Hello? What can you see from the book cover here?
A baby and batik, and the baby sleeping.
The baby is sleeping. Do you think he is a... Oh, he. Do you think the baby is a boy or a girl? It's a boy. Okay. So you saw a batik. That's good. Now, let me show you some of the pages, yeah? And this title today is called Selamat Datang ke Dunia Mahir Mirza. Welcome to this world, Mahir Mirza. So what is it? What is the book about? Do you know? Can you guess?
Baby, newborn baby.
Ah, about newborn baby. Okay, let's see. Today is a very special day. A baby boy is born into this world. And his mom and dad gave him a beautiful name, Mahir Mirza, which means pakar or skillful and bijaksana, intelligent. Okay? There is something special on this page. Can you point to me? What do you think is special on this page that you see on the book cover? That's right, the batik cloth. What is that batik cloth doing there? Okay? Do you know where this place is? What does it look like? Sorry? The hospital. Were you born at the hospital? You have to think, yeah, I know when you were a baby, you cannot remember, right? You can't remember. Were you born at the hospital, madam?
No.
Where were you born?
Kampung.
Kampong, is it in a house? Yes, a long time ago, some of us are born at home. Some of us are born at the hospital. Like I was born at Kandang Kerbau Hospital. It's not a buffalo's pen, but it's a hospital, okay? And sometimes some of us are born in a taxi. All right, but this child is born at the hospital. Okay, and when he was born, his father would say, whisper something into his right and left ear. So it's a little prayer. So the meaning of this prayer is to glorify our Almighty. And these would be the first words that the baby hear. The azan, the longer prayer on his right ear, and the shorter prayer on his left ear. Do you remember the azan? Malu. I said, do you remember? Do you remember? Or when you were a baby, do you remember? No, right? Not really, but now you know, right? The azan. Okay. But you know, when a child is born, even the mom, even though she is in so much pain, but when she first hold her baby, she felt so aman dan tenang. I'm trying to, translate into English. Okay? So this is how a mother would feel when she has a baby. The pain would just go away. And can you see there's something special in this page as well that you see on the book cover? Yes, that's right. What color is the batik cloth? Red. What do you think the batik cloth is doing there? Are we done? You can see an English word here. It's a boy, and he is at a little baby room, nursery. Now, Mahir Mirza, it's time for him to go home. Who do you think will wait for him at home? Mommy is at the hospital with him. Yes, you're right. The grandparents are waiting for him at home to welcome him with dates and honey. Thank you.
That was amazing. I think this is precisely why we wanted you to give us a reading.
Okay.
But at the same time, I thought that Fauzy, when I was reading the book, and it shared something very personal in terms of what happened to you, and maybe if you could read just about 4 paragraphs. It starts when you said, when I was born, Barkis members visited my home, and then the passing of your father. And just 4 paragraphs.
I'll not read it. If you read it, you can buy from the books later. But I just want to share is the brief summary is that this project is very personal to me because I've been a beneficiary of Badan Khairat since I was born. So it's pretty much like the book. I experienced almost everything. So when I was born, the Badan Khairat, they will come over to my house, they do a kenduri, they do the majlis tahnik, and in addition to that, they came to my house every single year for my birthday, and where they do kenduri doa selamat. But also, before that, the nearest mosque to my house is Masjid Darussalam. It was not even built yet. So I had my first religious lessons at a PAP kindergarten, which is now unspeakable for that to happen. And then they also celebrated milestones in my life. So when I passed my PSLE, they gave me a few $100. And then when I passed my O-level, they gave me money. And all the way until the end of my father's life. Whereby they took care of everything when my father passed away. But in my mind, MMBO, they've always been like a back burner in my head. Because when my father passed away, the immediately thing I do is I call Singapore Casket. Because that's the advertisement you see in the newspaper. And then my aunt was like, why don't you call Badan Khairat, because they are the one who will deal with all this. And then true enough, they did everything. From when they bathe the body, and then when they shroud it, and then they take out the van, the bus, the burial process, and then they also took care of the lunch for the people who came over, and then also they did my father's dapo, what is it in English? The exterior of the grave. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, I've been blessed. So this is my way to give back to what they have given to me in my life. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think that's a really personal, a very intimate look in terms of what it actually means to you and how you've experienced badan khairat kematian. You know, when I was also reading the book, and the authors really went to the ground and looked at all the so many different kinds of mutual benefit organizations. There was one like the 5KAG, right? The so many different acronyms and initials. But I wanted to really go back to the theme of the tradition and preservation, and maybe share what Mokhtar Lubis, the doyen of Indonesian literature, in his capacity as a cultural observer, spoke about the 5Ks. And he talked about keselarasan, which is alignment, keseimbangan, which is balance, kelestarian, which is preservation, kemanusiaan, which is humanism, the ability to differentiate between humanity and inhumane, and kesetiakawanan, which is solidarity. And so I think what came through in terms of these books, in terms of the production of these books, whether it's from Ungu Pen, whether it's the research that you have done, I think it's this idea that something organic is actually coming through, that is some ground up initiative in terms of how you want to think and talk about our culture, and it's a very participative voice. It's the voice of the rakyat in that sense, rather than coming down from the cultural literati or even coming down from the cultural gatekeepers. So let me now open the floor for any questions and comments and observations that you want to maybe ask our esteemed panelists. Let's open the session. Okay, there's a gentleman there.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, selamat pagi. Thanks for the presentation. I have a question for Tuan Zak. It's related to your practice as a photojournalist. I think I want to find out how do you capture what is intangible? Like in this case, in your presentation, you shared about intangible cultural heritage into your photos and your stories. Thank you.
Wow, so specific to me. Okay. Okay. Actually, you can't. That's a short answer. But the long answer, when we talk about, so I'm very fortunate that I work in both the photographic and textual space. And what we always try to do is that gap between the meaning between photo and text, we always try to bridge it. So what I've learned is that with a lot of the work that we do, as in for photojournalists or photographers, is that any project will always have it has a sense of time, it has a sense of place, and it has a sense of person. We always try to have all three, but if it doesn't work out, at least one would work. So I think the clearest example I can think of is, for example, if you were to look at the work that I did with our Gurkhas, the black and white portraits where they were holding up an artifact. So the artifact so these old Gurkhas men from Nepal, they work in Singapore as a paramilitary unit. So when I took portraits of them, unknowingly with their artifact of their old selves, what happened was that there was this cross between time and space. So the portraits of them when they were younger, which was in the past, was taken in Singapore. So you have the element of time, you have the element of space. But the portraits that I took of them when they were in Nepal was when they were older and when they were in another country. So that creates a tension between the picture. That creates a deeper look into the canvas of a photograph. Working for this, I wanted to basically commemorate their faces. I think I felt strong enough that removing all layers of context and you don't need it. You just want to be able to engage and see the people who are doing this work. Ideally, you would want to have a contemporary documentation of when they say would like doing the meetings and everything like that. But even then also the pictures might be a bit dry, but still it's better than nothing. So those were some of the things, the interrogations that I have in my head when it comes to visual documentation. But fundamentally, when you say the word photojournalism, the journalism comes first, not the photo. So I realized that this one you have to go with the research, the interview, and unpeel the layers. So that's where my training and my tradition comes in for this. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was actually taken away when you took photos of Anwar Ibrahim. There was no text, no audio visual, but it's just that you capture how he was actually a very mesmerizing.
Why just Anwar Ibrahim?
No, but that's exactly the point, because it's just photos, it's just stills, right? And you capture that energy and that atmosphere, and as you say, it's journalism comes first rather than just a technique of photography. But maybe I want to follow up with that to Puan in that sense, because we're talking about illustrations and how do we capture the imagination of the young ones, right? And you have started into augmented reality in terms of your books. Do you want to say something more about that?
Okay, the books that I have published in with augmented reality is not here because it's not related to culture in that sense, but it's still local context. So because, like I said, I'm doing early childhood, so one of the things that we often hear is that our kids these days who come to the preschool are not even talking in Malay, because my books are predominantly Malay or bilingual. So one of the ways to pick their interest is also to see how I can use technology in the books. So the books that I just launched in September recently, which is funded by the Lee Kuan Yew Fund for Bilingualism, I had augmented reality, I had animation, and I have 2 songs per book. There were 2 books. So all you need to do is download the app, a free app. You can just scan on some of the pages and monkey come alive. Then we also have the full animation of the entire book, which is hosted on my website, Ungu Pen and Ungu Pen YouTube channel. And for the songs, because I believe that sometimes kids, young kids especially, they need to learn in a very music and movement environment. So we have, the teachers, because teachers also, they give feedback a lot. Like when I first did my saga seed, I used a CD-ROM. But within a few years, nobody uses CD-ROM anymore. They don't even have the external thing to put the CD on their laptop. So I have to think of something. So what we do is we host the songs and animation on YouTube or our website, and all you need to do is scan the QR code. So while storytelling, you scan the QR code, you can hear the music and you can sing together with the kids. So that's my contribution to make reading not only just physical, but also both tangible and intangible in that sense, but not cultural.
I think it's extremely fascinating that we went into that approach in terms of getting the children to be able to not just engage with the text, but I think beyond the text as well. And I think that's amazing. As I was reading both these books, right, I think one of the my takeaways is this idea that both of you seems to even talking about cultural practices is actually having an eye to the future. It doesn't engage in pessimism. It doesn't engage in romanticism, where all our the past is glorious and perfect. There is this sense of moral center when you talked about charity, ikhlas, sincerity in doing the work in terms of kesantunan and adab, in terms of manners. It also talks about this idea of collectivism, the idea of solidarity, that we are in it together, as we said, brothers and sisters keepers, we kita jaga kita kind of a thing. And also, I think the amazing thing is this sense of aesthetics and the arts, and I think that's never far away in terms of the things that we do. Fauzy, do you want to speak a bit more about how you think in terms of the future? How do you think the MBOs will adapt in terms of what are the kinds of future do you think we might have for our future generations?
For me, when I started off this project, is not to save these MMBOs. The process is to document it so that people in the future, they will know that this thing happened. Because if I want to go out and save them and then start bringing in, I will have to start competing with the existing companies that are doing all this practice already. So a lot of things that we used to do in the past has now been commercialized. Even back then when Badan Hairat does wedding, is all the neighbors, they will come down and then they will do the Kendara, Deriwang together. But now everything has been commercialized. Just go to the restaurant because it's hassle free and then you just have to pay them. But also now it costs more. And this kind of practice are slowly dying. And in order to revive it or redo it, it can, sometimes it can just be tokenism because you just, why are you doing this for? Is it just for show? Or is it for bringing communities together? Because that's what they do it in the first place, when is helping each other and also not expecting to get something in return at the end of the day. But also bringing back to this Hairat's topic, it is a point whereby when we did our last book launch, Zakaria said that what is the theatrics of death at the moment? Because the Chinese, you know, they've put on this spectacular show, when the past, sorry, show is not the right word, but the procession. But right now, what is ours to show? Is it just going to be very insular, whereby this company will just come? Or are we still going to start activating people, your friends, and then they will still come out and help out you? Yeah.
I just want to add one point quickly. The idea of documentation versus, in a way, activism. In Singapore, it's fairly separate. But in other places, you know, the documentarians and activists sit on the same table in terms of pushing through that this is important, we need to do it, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I think talking about the idea of community in terms of your burial process and everything, you have to ask ourselves the ways. You know, some things are lost, but of course you get the efficiency and everything moves. But how do you want the final journey of your loved ones to be conducted? It's something worth thinking about. I think everyone should consider that, because the no greater feeling than seeing family and relatives and community come to herald the passing of your loved one. Yeah.
Yeah. Just at one point that when activism and documentation come together, if we were to do that for that project, it would be a breach of our grant contract because we are partially funded by NHB. So we are not able to do activism as part of our project. Yeah.
Great. So we've got two questions. Maybe the lady first.
Yeah, you saw a van that said Badan Hairat Kematian. My question is, do you have this feeling, or any of you, perhaps even yourself, Ustaz, being knowledgeable in the comparative situations in our region, that they are more present in Malaysia, Indonesia? Perhaps we might or might not have that much experience. But for us in Singapore, because, you know, the state has come in and we have very many bodies who are able to take over in a commercialized way, as you say, many of the functions. Has that, in a way, increased the, how do you say, de-intimized the relationship between, you know, having, for example, in Ramadan, you know, more Tarawih prayers being conducted in the void deck? Well, you know, has that link been attenuated in our case, as compared with, for example, in Malaysia? Because I'm magnifying the vision of various vans. The peninsula is very large, and you know, they're more, the communities are more knitted in this sense. That's my question.
Maybe I'll collect one more question and then we'll get the panelists to respond. Sir?
Thank you so much. My name is Asif Shuja. I'm from Middle East Institute, National University of Singapore. one of my work is to also study the comparatively the Muslim societies. Maria, the presentation that you showed, one thing really struck me is the piece of cloth which is continuously there with the child, the red cloth. This is a new concept for us because from the Muslim tradition I have been grown into. For marriage there is a clothing, funeral also. For birth there is no. So could you tell us more about that particular piece of cloth? I'm forgetting the name, and also whether it is different for a boy and a girl. Thank you.
Fine, so maybe I'll ask you to get you to answer first, and then we'll end with the. Is that all right? Or do you, okay.
As far as I know, batik, we have different types of batik, and I'm not too sure whether there's any batik specifically for wedding, but for I know funeral, usually they use more of the earth and brown tones. So batik is definitely used very much in this region, Nusantara. We have Malaysian batik, we have Indonesian batik, we have Peranakan batik, we have all sorts of batik. It all depends on sometimes the motifs and where it is the craftsmen come from. So that's as much as I know about batik. Whether it's for use for wedding, anyone can help.
Sorry, my name is Julina from Malay Heritage Foundation. Maybe just to help you understand, like what Maria has already mentioned, batik is basically a cloth, a type of textile that is produced in the region, and they share a lot of many similar characteristics. And because it's used a lot in the community, sometimes it becomes part of the customs and traditions as well. So like the swaddling of the baby in the batik cloth and all that, because it is a material that is usually found in the household. But whether there is a specific one for a boy or girl, don't have. As far as I know, also we don't make a distinction. It's just something that we use. But for death, yes, usually we avoid all the very bright colors. It's more earth tones. And I think it is something to do with, it comes maybe from the Javanese tradition, because a lot of the batik comes from Indonesia. So this thing about using batik to, cover the body before it's being bathed and all that comes from that tradition. We have a lot of huge Javanese migration to Singapore, so that influence could have started from there. For kids, we don't really have for wedding. Not in Singapore, we don't practice it in terms of what particular, but maybe in Indonesia, there's certain batik motifs that they use for certain things, like in Solo, like that in Solo or they have particular, but not in Singapore. We don't like. Only this motif is used for batik. We don't practice that. Just to give you a context of it.
Maybe for cloth, as far as I know, like when we do it in our child-friendly setting, we also show pelikat. Pelikat is another type of cloth that is more like squarish and rectangular, and these are usually worn by men. And the more floral batik is usually worn by women. But of course, we have other forms of batik that the Javanese also wear. And we also have the songket, which is more of the weaving technique. Because it's more expensive, I think some of the threads used, like gold, that would be more suited for weddings, but not batik, songket maybe. Yeah. So there's different types of fabric in this region, I would say.
Right, so the question on the differences, whether you notice any differences between Malaysia and Singapore, and that sense of the de-intimacy, I think that's the word that you use, right? I think because in terms of how do they continue to maintain that personal touch?
For Singapore, it has become very structural, because a lot of the things that they do, or practices that they used to do, has been taken up by the state, mostly by the state or commercialism. So like when I do my religious classes or when I learn Quran, we trust or rather my parents trust the ustads in the neighborhood to teach me correct things. But then like right now we have ustazas that teach us, they must be accredited through the ARS system. Only then they're allowed to teach. Because now with social media, they have to ensure that the people are learning the right things and not masked under terrorism or any kinds of things. But for my cousins who are in Indonesia and Malaysia, a lot of the things they have to do is they have to fend for themselves because the state may not take over certain items and activities, or some of them are done by non-profit organization. So the community spirits are there because they cannot fully rely on the government or the state to take care of them. They have to help each other out to survive and thrive as a community. So for those kind of spirits, it's still we can still sort of like romanticize the kampong spirit that we used to have here. But here, I think such things could well, it still exists in a very small pockets here and there, but you won't be able to see on a large scale happening throughout the whole of Singapore. Yeah.
Just want to add a quick point. I hope it's quick. Leonora, thanks for coming again and for that question. So let me just share. So we managed to get a feature in Berita Harian, which was about 2 pages, tabloid size. Not tabloid, I mean broadsheet, which is pretty big. So on the same day that happened, I was with a group of journalists from Asia. They were on a sabbatical program called Asia Journalism Fellowship. So they were like, hey, Zakaria's here, and you know. So I was looking at the reaction of the Muslim journalists from, say, Indonesia, Bangladesh, and a few others. And it looked like, why is there a crisis? Like, you know, so for them, I think they're like, why are we even, like, I didn't really catch whether they actually said that, but in my eyes was like, this is a crisis, you know, it looks existential, you know, who's going to take over these communities, you know. But for them, it's like, there's no problem over where our countries are, you know, it seems. So I think it's maybe the Singaporean context where maybe it's a bit of a secular thing, or it could be Muslims as a minority and everything, yeah. So that's just my reflection. I was hoping that they'd be like, yeah, same problem in our country, you know, like no one's taking over. But they're like, I think they have more bodies, maybe like, you know, as compared to us. So that's my take on that. Other Muslim countries don't see it as a big a problem as where we are, yeah.
One more question? Okay.
No, not question, but just to add from my own personal experience as well, just to give context. I think how HIRAT, the whole MBO situation, mutual benefit, came about in the Singapore context really as a response, like what you pointed out, as a displacement. Because the Malay community, you know, either they move from the kampung setting to a HDB setting. It happened in my case, my family's case. When we all moved to the flat, for example, my dad decided that, oh, Muslims in these 4 flats, let's come together and form this mutual benefit because we want to help each other, because the displacement. So what, and it used to be called Empat Harmoni because it's 4 blocks, you see. Yeah, it's in Clementi. So we organize those things, and we also organize things like before Ramadan, we celebrate the day before we start our fast, or the day tomorrow is going to be Shawwal, so we also celebrate that. So my mom will be cooking and preparing, and everybody. So it's that sense of community. And I think because the displacement from the rural, no, for those who live in the kampung, or for those who live in the islands, like the West Coast case, a lot of probably came from the southern islands who got resettled, came to the mainland. So there's a need to rebuild this sense of community. And I think a lot of these organizations came about because of that. Because they want to recapture back this sense of community in a different setting. But as time moves by, societies change, needs change. And I think that's where the challenge and the crisis comes in, because your expectations have also changed, needs have also changed. So if these organizations are then able to reorganize themselves, like what the customs people did, then they are probably able to sustain and continue to provide that sense of community to their members. But if the other ones who have difficulty, challenges, then they will have a problem. But apart from the HIRAT, there's also the Marhaban groups that continue to also perform some of these functions as well. So in the Malay community, there are many layers of these so-called grounds up group, very non-profit oriented, but they provide that sense of community, that sense of kesetia kawanan, you know, because they want to have that sense of solidarity. But a lot of it is very community and communal based. Yeah. I hope that answers your question as well.
came up with the Karya system. That helps a lot.
Karya and Hayat Dakwah, yes. Exactly. Do you want to say something?
Yes, I have one question for Julina. How can Malay Heritage Foundation support this Hirat for the future?
Wow, that's a very tough question.
Do you want to take it offline, Julina? Or do you want to answer
Can
that?
I take that? I can answer it.
Yeah, okay,
from,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think we are supposed to end at 12:30, but actually we've gone past our time. Once again, I want to thank our panelists. I think you've done an amazing job in documenting, archiving, recording, and putting the voices of the Malay community in the printed word. I married a Kelantanese, so when my baby daughter was born, in Kelantan the practice is a bit different in terms of feeding asam and garam. So it's not just tahnik. Yes, and hence the yes, exactly. And right, okay, yes. So we have a bit different practices, and instead of Hirat Kematian over there, it's really dependent on the surau and the community of people living around the surau itself. So once again, thank you so much. I hope that you've gained some insights in terms of Malay cultural practices, in terms of how we manifest our ethical norms, and in terms of how we think about our tradition. And so once again, please join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you.
So thank you once again, Ustaz Alfian, and our 3 speakers today. We have now reached, I'm pretty sure that we've all benefited greatly from the SIS forum today. Before we proceed to the end segment, I would like to invite Madam Rahayu Buang, MHF Vice Chairman, to present a gift as a token of appreciation to the panel for the 3rd SIS session. Miss Maria Mahat, first. Tak ada. Oh, sorry. Okay. We would like to take a group photo though, so we can take together. So thank you once again, Ustaz Alfian and our 3 speakers. We have now reached the end of the 3rd SIS lecture in 2022. Please allow me to make some administrative announcements. For your information, details about our programs are available online on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and the MHF website. So follow us on our social media to get the latest news on MHF. You may also subscribe to our newsletter and join MHF's mailing list. Before we close the curtain on this SIS session, I would like to invite everyone in attendance to scan this QR code and complete the feedback form. We would very much welcome and appreciate your feedback. And for the attendees here, we have also prepared some refreshments at the back. Yeah. So here I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for setting aside the time to be with us today. Inshallah, we will meet again in the next SIS session. Stay tuned for updates on our social media platforms. On behalf of MHF and Singapore Book Council, I, Aqilah binti Dahlan, wish you a great Saturday and a fantastic weekend. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.